Right, so we're going to talk through the classification of skill. Okay, so skills are learned patterns of movement acquired through training. They enable athletes to perform effectively. Skills range from simple to complex, and can be open or closed depending on the sport. Right, characteristics of a skillful movement. Okay, skilled performers are not born with motor skills already in place. They have to learn the key, have to learn the skills. Movement skills are also called motor skills. So let's not get mixed up. If you ever get anything what says motor skills, okay, it is just movement skills. The definition of a motor skill is a learned, once again, learned movement response. Now, to be skillful, a movement or motor skill should be, I mean, these are the key words. Efficient, we need to remember these. Predetermined, coordinated, fluent, aesthetic, good technique. Now, we need to actually know these and be able to list them off, because you could get a question, 6-mark question, such as what are the characteristics of a skillful movement? And you need to list these off and be able to talk through them. That's key. So, efficient, no waste of effort in the movement. For example, a top-level butterfly swimmer will not make any unnecessary splashing or kicking when racing. So key, no wasted effort is efficient. Predetermined, performing knows what they are doing and what they are trying to achieve. For example, a good badminton player can play a serve with disguise into the corner so it beats the opponent. Now, keeper, predetermined, you know what you're going to do. It's not fluke. You know you're going to do it and you do it. Coordinated, all the parts of the skill are linked together seamlessly. For example, a triple jumper hops, steps and jump movement must be in the right place at the right time. Fluent, flowing and smooth. For example, a high-class trampolinist will perform a routine for each move flows smoothly into the next. Aesthetic, it looks good. For example, an international slalom snowboard racer stylishly and looks good to the spectators. Aesthetically pleasing, they say, is, and it looks good. Good technique, correct technique when executing the skill. Okay, for example, a player will hit the ball with good technique to a teammate during a match. So these are the key things you need to remember. Go over and over and over them. A good exam question is what are the characteristics of a skillful movement, and you need to be able to list off these 6. Now, we also have a continuum. Okay, there are different types of continuum we'll talk through, but it's pretty much the long arrows here. Okay, and continuum is a range or sliding scale between 2 extreme points. Each point of continuum is slightly greater or lesser than its neighbour. You can move up and you can move down the continuum. For example, in physical education, pupils take part in a games continuum based on an age range. So if you think when you're 5 years old, the skills you do are quite basic, a lot of multi-skill games, okay? Learning how to catch, learning how to throw. As you get older, as you move up the scale, they become harder. So you might first then learn, you've learned how to catch, you then might learn how to play touch rugby or tag rugby. Then you learn how to tackle. And as you get towards 16, it becomes even harder, and you might play a full game of rugby. You don't just play a full game of rugby at 5 years old, you build up to it along a continuum. Motor or movement skills are classified on different continua. This is the plural of continuum. The 2 main ones are environmental and difficulty. Okay. Now, environmental continuum. Sport skills can be classified according to how much they are affected by the sporting environment. Examples of environmental stimuli are other people. For example, a netballer reacting to their own and the other teammates around them. So, for instance, if I'm just passing a ball to someone, that can be classed on the continuum as quite easy. Now, when you add a player who's trying to get the ball off me, suddenly that simple pass becomes more difficult. Then suddenly you might add into a game situation where we've got 7 aside and we're trying to pass the ball and be marked, and I've got someone blocking me as well. Suddenly that pass becomes even harder. So something from a simple pass to a pass, try and get past one player, to a pass in a game situation is the same skill, but it's become harder and harder and harder. Okay. Also, the surface you're playing on. Okay. For example, a cross-country runner running on a muddy or dry ground. So if it's running on a running track, it becomes easy. Running up muddy hills, suddenly it becomes a lot harder. So it moves up the continuum. The weather. Yeah. If you're playing golf, where it's not windy, you hit the ball, it goes straight. Suddenly it's windy, you hit the ball and it flies off to the side. Yeah, it might be football, playing with the wind behind you, where you can kick the ball and it goes really, really far, or kicking the ball into it and it comes back to you. Suddenly that skill becomes harder depending on the weather. Okay. Stimulation, for example, the venue or crowd. So suddenly if you're playing in a cup final in front of 100,000 people, suddenly that pressure might get on top of you instead of playing on the playground on the AstroTurf at lunchtime. So even the people around you, the crowd, the pressure of the event might affect you as well. So two different characteristics of environment continuum are closed and open. Okay, closed skills are skills that are not affected by the environment. So for instance, you could play badminton indoors, the weather's not going to affect you at all. Okay, so the environment won't affect you at all. They are usually self-paced and occurred in fixed and predictive situations. So if you take it even further, if you think of someone throwing a dart at a dartboard, inside, weather's not going to affect them, there's no other people going to affect them, they're just throwing a dart at a dartboard, they can practice that same skill over and over and over again. They've used the example of a gymnast doing a set floor routine where they can just run, do the skill, and no one's going to get in their way. The weather's not going to affect them at all. The only thing that might affect them is the crowd. An open skill are skills that are affected by the environment. So this could be football, where people might affect you, try and tackle you. The weather might be outside, it starts to rain, starts to become windy. Okay, there might be a crowd who are screaming and shouting, and that will affect the person's decision making. Okay, and they've got to change their skill to an unpredictable environment. Now the key is remembering what a closed skill is and remembering what an open skill is. A lot of 1 or 2 mark questions get asked about that. Right, so this is skill. Okay, most skills are not totally closed or open, but range between 2. They are somewhere the environmental they are somewhere on environmental continuum between open and closed. So if you look here, a diver in a competition, a diver is in complete control of the rate and timing of the performance. So they do that dive over and over again, and nothing gets in their way. But the thing that might affect it is the crowd. That's why it's not totally closed. The crowd might affect it. Okay. Right, a wheelchair racer needs to be aware of racers in other lanes to adapt to the track conditions. So in theory, they can repeat that race over and over again, but other people then start to affect it. They might need to go faster because people are overtaking them. They might slow down because they've got a good lead, so other people may affect them as well. Then a basketball player must perceive and respond to the ball, their team and other opposition all at once. So suddenly they've got a game where there's 7 other people on the pitch and they've got to play against them. So instead of a simple chess pass, there'll be someone in the way. There'll be someone trying to mark them. It could be that they need to playing against the clock, they need to do it quick. Okay, so that's why it's open. Right, difficulty continuum. Skills can be classified according to how complex they are or difficult the movement is. The 2 different characteristics of the difficulty continuum are simple and complex. So that's how I'm measured. Okay, so it's there, complex and simple. So difficult, continuous, simple skills are skills where the performer doesn't have to process much information to make many decisions. The skill has only a small number of parts and doesn't require much feedback during its performance. An example is a simple skill is sprinting, running in a straight line. A complex skill are skills where the performer has to process lots of information and make lots of decisions. The skill has made subroutines or parts to it and requires a lot of feedback during its performance. Example of a complex skill is a tennis serve. So you've got throwing the ball up, you've actually got raising your racket, you've got hitting the ball over a net. So suddenly that becomes a lot harder than running just in a straight line. Now you can see here exactly the same, simple at the one end, complex at the other. Okay, so running with a ball in a straight line in rugby, okay, is easy. Kicking a penalty or a conversion is more complex. This is the same game, but different skills in the game can be simple and different can be complex. Being able to scrummage safely suddenly becomes a very complex skill, because you're a very difficult skill, because you're also working with many other people in order to stay safe. So you can see in the same sport, there are different skills in each sport. Some can be simple, some can be complex. Right, we've got some exam style questions, so have a go, then bring them into class.